I'm arriving to the Sasquatch territory, and I find this feather in the middle of the field before you start seeing the structures. I'm not really sure if this is significant or not, but nonetheless, I recorded it because in another area that I research, I find feathers in the middle of the road, in the middle of trails, on top of stumps, and I'm not sure if it's random, but it could be gifting. I'm not really sure. This footage was recorded in July 2020. It's really hot. There's a lot of bugs out, a lot of spider webs, and just a lot of potential dangers to watch out for. If you haven't watched the previous video, you need to go watch it. It shows the structures when they're all up and at their fullest. And right now I'm coming in to check to see if anything has changed, if there's anything new. You can see the ground is littered with a bunch of broken trees and branches, and they've been snapped multiple times. You can also see multiple trees that are broken and they've been placed up against other trees. It's most definitely too hot to be walking around the woods. It's probably about 98 degrees right now, but that's the way I like it. Nobody's out in the woods, and that's why I have a lot of activity happen in July, give or take a few months. You can see some pine trees been laid into a pile right here, and we're getting ready to enter into where I can start seeing the structures, because you can't see them from the field. To me, it makes complete sense why they would be using this area. They can sit here and overlook this field and also watch the trail and the gravel road and parking lot nearby. I'm always on edge when I get to this part and always watching my back. I don't bring a firearm with me because I feel like that deters them, nor do I want to provoke them. I've been noticing a lot of Sasquatch activity where the pine trees like to grow, and I'm not really sure why that is. What are your guys' thoughts on why they like to hang out in the pines? Does it match the color of their fur? Is it quiet and comfortable for them to move around because of all the pine needles? I know the pine trees must be a lot easier to break than the oak trees, and it's possible that a lot of bugs like to hang out in the pine trees. I don't know what's eating up these pines, but you can see a lot of rotten pines, and there's got to be a lot of bugs around, and mushrooms. So I could see them being in here eating all that. A lot of times I will see turkey hanging out in the pine trees too. They like to get up there and roost on top of ridges. Here you can see these dead pine logs. One is balanced on top of the stump, and the other big log is balanced on top of it, forming an X. And here you can see a tree that's wedged in between these two trees and broken as well. I also forgot to mention that this is a ridge top, so it seems like they like to hang out on ridges, as in the high ground. And it makes complete sense that they would want to have the high ground and be in the far back. Here we get to see a giant X formation, and in the last video that I posted, the X formation was two logs side to side forming an X, and I believe that some of it's been knocked down or maybe changed. As you can see, it's impossible for the wind to do this, and multiple X's in the same area, as well as even children doing this. I just don't see them having the strength to do it. As far as an adult doing this, or multiple adults, I just don't really see that being the case either. And if it is, they belong in a zoo and they got some serious testosterone issues. I obviously already know what this is because I've seen them, but this is for the skeptics out there, the people that say that there's no physical evidence out in the woods showing that they live out in the forest. Well, here you go. Here's a better shot of the X, and again, this will not be the first time that we run into it. It's hard to maneuver around this area just because there's tons of spider webs, a lot of bugs, and I'm watching out for copperheads and any other potential danger just because I don't want to get hurt out here. I would say the two most annoying things in Missouri are mosquitoes and ticks. Here you can see an old tree break. That's important to me because it shows that they've been using this area in the past, and I can see a new sign, so that means that they're returning to this ridge top. So I know there's been a lot of talk about Bigfoot being interdimensional or spiritual, and I'm not really sure about that. I mean, I can't say I've seen the lights, the orbs, and that's in a future story, but I see more evidence of them being physical than something spiritual or interdimensional. And I'm not trying to knock anybody, but that's just personally what I believe from what I've seen and the evidence that I've gathered. I know I've heard some wild stories on the internet, so I'm not really sure what to think anymore. The Bigfoots that I saw were trying to hide from me. They were hiding behind trees, hiding behind brush, and I feel like if you're interdimensional, you don't really need to do all that. In no way do I consider myself a researcher or a scientist. I'm simply just an explorer. I love to hunt and fish. Being in the outdoors is my passion. It makes me feel alive. One of my favorite things to do is setting up trail cameras and checking them all year. I like to go camping, ride four-wheelers, go to the rivers, you name it. Lately, my sole focus has been trying to self-film one of my own hunts. I've been trying to put down a big buck with my bow. Hasn't happened yet, but I've come close. They just slip on through. It's really tough. And I don't understand why I have to have some label to be involved with Bigfoot. I'm just a guy with a camera that loves nature, loves filming, loves to hunt. It's that plain and simple, really. Now we're beginning to get deeper into Bigfoot territory, so we'll start seeing more structures, more breaks, and just more of a disturbance in the area. Here we have another structure, and on the ground you can see a bunch of trees laying on the ground, all facing the same way. There it is, and again, broken from the same height. Also notice on the pine trees you'll see limbs busted and pine branches scattered all throughout the forest floor. Alright, in this structure you can see another X. Not really sure what the X's mean. What are your guys' thoughts? To me it symbolizes the indication of a warning sign. Stay out. It could also be a territory marker or a way to break up their silhouette when they're hunting. We don't know. I personally believe it's language. That's a phrase right there, similar to the Chinese language. In the same way, a Chinese letter or symbol, whatever it's called, can mean a lot of things. So, for example, instead of that being A, B, or C, it means possibly hunters in the area. And obviously, I'm not going to claim to know this. This is just a theory. Here we've seen probably our 4th or 5th arch with trees and limbs put on top of it or woven in between it. Here we're getting to another big structure where you can see big trees, medium-sized trees, all kinds of limbs packed up into this one area. And once again, if you watched the previous video, you'll get to see this when it was in actual structure form. It's been changed a lot, added to, knocked down, and just looks different this time of year. Here you will see trees that have been snapped about 4 or 5 times. And I know when a tree falls, it doesn't break in 5 separate pieces. Again, I'm not here to plead with you guys, try to make you guys believe. I'm just throwing out the evidence that I have documented. Alright, now if you've been watching, you think, alright, that's just a bunch of trees piled up, and that's pretty random, that occurs a lot in the forest. What about this one? What about this one? Any thoughts? This is an extremely large tree that's been broken from the base and has been bent into an arch. Now, the amount of strength that needs to be generated to bend that into an arch is extremely extraordinary. You can see all the trees that have been set up around it or that it was bent around. And around it you can see a bunch of limbs that have been snapped off. Not to mention this was not here during the winter, so it's pretty cool to see a newer structure in the area. You will also notice a discoloration on the bottom of the pine tree, and you can see the mushrooms growing. I'm not sure if that was once on the ground, or maybe that was the north side of the tree, but it wasn't always bent that way. Here you will see more limb breaks. I want to know your guys' thoughts on the arches. What do you guys think the arches are? I've really been curious about this, and I just can't really come up with anything other than the symbols. Not only is this one of the best arches I've ever found, you can also see a bunch of trees leaning up against the arch, and it almost seems like it's woven around the arch. Pretty amazing, if you ask me. You'll also notice how quiet it is out here. You haven't heard a car, you haven't heard any people, you haven't even heard a plane fly over me. It shows how quiet it is. Keep that in mind. So now we're walking down the backside of the ridge on the downward slope, and you can see a lot more trees leaned up against one another in the same direction. And all the sign on the ground. There's many arches, many X's, and just tons of sign everywhere. Let me know if you guys see anything in the background as I was focused on the viewfinder, and maybe any other details that I've missed or haven't mentioned here. Alright, here we're getting ready to walk up on one of my favorite structures that I've found. It's actually a tree break. It's fairly fresh. If you look at the canopy of the tree, which is actually on the ground now, it looks like something took shelter there. And I've thought about this for a while, and what I came up with was it was a rainy day, and a mother Sasquatch came up to this tree, snapped it down for her juvenile or baby Bigfoot, and he was able to get in there and take shelter from the rain. Now, this is obviously just a theory. Now, I actually have footage from 3 weeks prior to this, hence the reason why I came back, just because I wasn't satisfied with the footage I got. But take a look and check out this tree break nest from 3 weeks ago.
Look at that. Oh shit. It's like a little nest. Wow.
There's a lot of things as well that the camera is not picking up, as far as like indentions on the ground or certain little features that just aren't getting picked up by the camera. And let me tell you, it's a lot different feeling being here in person rather than seeing it on camera. The best way I can describe that is like seeing a mountain on a Google image or on a phone and actually seeing it in person. There's a big difference. You'll see a reddish-orange ring marked on some of the pine trees surrounding the structures. I believe this is the park rangers trying to cut down the trees and knock down the structures, but they haven't come in to do it, so I'm not really sure what they're for. Here I begin to make my way to a double arch with a tree on top of them. Again, in my mind, this is a symbol, some type of trail marker. If you see me waving this stick in front of me, that means I'm clearing out the spider webs. There's literally spider webs on every single tree out here. Can't tell you how many spiders I've had jump in my head or how many spider webs I've had wrapped around my face. But it's part of the territory, it's part of the job, and there's no other way to tread through this forest without dealing with it. One thing that really helps is I'm not allergic to poison ivy either. This is my second time being on the backside of this ridge, and I honestly get a strange feeling when I'm back here. I don't really like being back there. I feel like there's all kinds of eyes on me, although I'm not hearing any knocks or strange sounds. It's just a really eerie feeling being back here by yourself. I know it's only a matter of time until I encounter a Sasquatch back here, but I'm hoping it's one that gets up and walks away or stands there for a little while. In no way am I ever expecting to feed these animals out of the palm of my hand. I am just simply trying to get something better in the evidence world as far as clear footage. I know Bigfoot's ultimate goal is to avoid people and to avoid confrontation with people. It makes them extremely nervous. Now, why they throw rocks at people, whoop, and tree break when people are around, I don't know. Obviously, they have a sense of humor, but they're not walking out and shaking your hand. I also believe they don't like me walking around with this camera in my hand. It could possibly be a gun or something that could injure or hurt them. Chances are that something like a camera in your hand can make them extremely nervous and shy and cause them not to approach you. Essentially, what I'm trying to do here is gain their trust. This is one method that I used in the past to have my encounters, and I believe this is how it worked. But I would just go into the forest looking for mushrooms, looking for any edible foods, and I believe doing this over time, it got them used to me and let them know that I wasn't any harm and was there just to look for simply mushrooms like they were. And I essentially became one of them. If you guys follow along, I am working on my encounter stories. I've just been working on a better format to present them, but stick around, I'll have those for you guys. Here you can see the tips of all the branches have been broken. The limbs are snapped and popped off of this pine tree. And what I imagine is the Bigfoot just walks across here and he snaps and breaks the limbs as he's walking by. Now you would think, since they're such hairy beings, that they would leave some type of hair behind when they're twisting or snapping limbs, especially some type of pine tree that leaves behind a sap. Here in a few minutes I begin to look for hairs, and guess what I find? The truth is, a lot of people don't know when they have a Bigfoot encounter. A tree could get pushed over and they don't realize it until a year later when they're watching a Bigfoot show. I'm here to help you guys bridge that gap and understand the sign and know what's going on around you. One thing that really helps me is I view the world differently and I pay attention to detail. We are all scientists, whether we believe it or not. From the time we were born, we were always experimenting. The problem is, at some point in our life, somebody told us to sit down and shut up. Seems like schools and societies don't teach you how to think, they teach you what to think. Here we have another pine tree that was pushed over and derooted. I always like to leave an apple or some type of gift as a sign of respect and to show that I mean no harm. Here you can see where a tree once stood, but now is gone and is nowhere in sight. Maybe in one of those tree structure piles or God knows where. People probably think that I just find it fun to be out here looking for Bigfoot, but the honest truth is I love nature and I want more answers just like anybody else, and I'm just going to come out here and do it because nobody else is. Might as well, right?
Alright, I'm not for sure, but I keep finding these busted pine tree limbs, and they're just little bitty. It's like something's in here just busting limbs off. And I've noticed this since last year, and I was kind of mad at myself for not checking them last year when they were just super green and fresh. I mean, I must have came in the day of or the day after. But these ones, you can tell they're a little bit more faded and not as bright as the old ones. But you can see, well, probably not, but there's some sap at the end where it's busted up, and I'm looking for hairs on it. I actually found one that I got up in another spot that I'm getting ready to go to, but found a nice hair. I found a pretty good hair sample, so we'll have to see.
This is one of the first times that I've ever looked for hair, and imagine that I found some. Not really sure what to do with something like this, but I got it bagged up and stored away. Now I can see why they really like to hang out in the pines. They can really blend in. They are all basically wearing a ghillie suit. Better than one you can buy at a store, apparently. Ghillie suits were designed to break up the outline shape of a human, so it really makes sense how they're able to hide so well.
Here we have a tree toilet, apparently. Ew, that's gross.
Even after seeing Bigfoot or multiple Bigfoots, I still find it crazy to think that they haven't been discovered yet by mainstream science. Now, they've obviously been discovered by people like you and I, but the fact that we don't see them on the Discovery Channel yet, or there's nothing out there that's extremely significant, blows my mind. It's got to be possible to get perfect footage of them just because of the stories I hear where they come up to someone's back porch or they're stealing somebody's chickens or looking through the window. Now, yeah, they may know what a camera is, but when you're looking through somebody's window, you're asking for it. I have some people that tell me, just leave them alone, they didn't do anything to you. Well, it's still my forest, it's our forest, and I'm not the one throwing rocks and whistling at people, so they obviously ask for the attention even though they like to hide. We all have our thoughts and theories, and even if you've seen them, at the end of the day, nothing makes sense. I have thought about this for a very long time, and it makes a lot of sense to me, the way that they're able to hide, the way that they're able to move so fast and so quietly. There's a lot of factors that come into play with them. For example, their eyesight. It's just amazing. Their eyesight at night. Everything that they do is so swift and perfect. They are literally the masters of the woods. You'll notice when I get to the backside of this ridge, I start to see less and less tree structures and tree breaks, but nonetheless, they're still there. There's still evidence, just minimal. You don't have to have sign either to have a Bigfoot encounter. They can obviously be anywhere, and look at here, I'm where all the sign is at, but I'm not even hearing a knock, so hence they travel a lot. A lot of people seem to think that if there is a Bigfoot, there's only going to be one in Canada or possibly Alaska if it does exist. But the truth is, there's so much land in Missouri. There's over 100,000 acres of national forest, and not to mention all the private land. That is one thing I notice in my areas, is that the Sasquatch are always hanging out on the private side or on private properties. Yeah, I see a lot of sign on public land, but they really like to get in on those private land spots, especially areas where nobody ever goes back to. I most definitely believe that they are smart enough to know what a no trespassing sign is, or a purple marker, or national forest where people are always walking in on the same trails and it's always different people. I suspect that they like to hang out in areas that are private land where nobody ever walks back to. And of course there are people that use their land a lot, and there is definitely people out there that have tons of land that never use it. And there's also people out there that have multiple areas of many acres that never use it. They own it just to own it. These are the areas that these Bigfoots like to hide in. The fact is, there's tons of land out there that hasn't been explored or hardly ever gets explored, and I honestly believe that people don't realize that. There's a lot of land out here, people. You could easily get lost. It would take you days and days to walk through every bit of this. Months, years possibly. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this out here in Missouri. If you talk about Bigfoot, you're a nut, and nobody really talks about it. It doesn't exist. So the fact that I can get on here and show my videos, my evidence, my findings, and just how I explore and do what I do, is amazing. Thank you. I appreciate it.